What's up? It's F. Gardner. Right now, I wanted to talk about a conspiracy theory that probably sounds like maybe the most far out, far out there conspiracy I've talked about yet. So, there's a conspiracy theory. So everyone's familiar with flat Earth, right? At least they've heard of it. I've discussed that before, but there's also a conspiracy theory known as no Earth theory. So just as there are flat earthers, there are also no earthers. And a lot of people don't know what that term even means. Like, well, what do you mean there's no Earth? So yeah, basically that's what it means. And the reasons for that, there's a couple of reasons and a couple different theories that I'm aware of. A lot of flat earthers are also no earthers. And I was on the fence about that until I became a Buddhist. So I'm a flat earther and I'm also a no earther. That I think that is technically true. So Buddhism teaches that this is all empty. This doesn't exist. This is all illusory. It's fake. It's your imagination, or not even just your imagination. It's like the Matrix. That's sort of what some people think. They think of the Matrix in like a more literal way than I kind of do. I agree with like the manner it's taught in Buddhism. So yeah, the Matrix, yes, I don't think I don't think we're living in a computer, like a computer program. I don't think it's that though. I think that's just like the closest way we can like understand that, because like when you use examples like that, we'll often relate things to like things humans can understand or relate to. And everyone's seen the movie The Matrix. Great movie. And yeah, it has a lot of truth in it because it's based on Buddhism. But I don't think it's a computer program. Excuse me. I think it's just, like I said, that's just something we can associate it with, like to try to understand it. And that's one of the best or easiest ways that we can do so, is because a human, we know what a computer program is. We know what computer software is. So it's like kind of like the brain in a vat theory, or brain in a jar theory, where it's like if there's a human brain and it's plugged into a computer, it could think it's a person and think it's living in a world, but it doesn't really exist. So it's kind of like that, the Matrix example. But I don't think it's fundamentally like a computer. That's just something we're relating it to. The truth is probably just something we can't even understand because we're limited by our senses and our, like, there's a Buddhist saying, like, your understanding only goes so far as your understanding is capable of. So that sort of logic it exists in not just Buddhism, but also like Taoism and Hinduism too, like in the East. And there's a couple different train of thoughts of that. So like in Buddhism, you have like the aggregates, like this is illusory. So like the physical body and all your senses, sense of touch, smell, taste, and like everything, and the manner in which you think. So it's like you can't figure out what's outside of the Matrix while you're still inside of it. The only way to know for sure is to leave it, to exit the Matrix. And in Buddhism, there's the term samsara. So it's like, which would be like the Matrix, the system. So it's like, we can't really describe what's out of this. And even saying out of this doesn't really make sense, because this isn't fundamentally happening. It just seems like it is. So no Earth theory teaches that, yeah, there isn't an Earth. The Earth doesn't exist. It was never created. It was never made. It never happened. It never had a beginning, middle, or end. It's just this. It's like a dream. but a dream that never even happened. Yeah, it's a lot to take in. That's a lot to process, I guess, but I think it's the truth. And even saying dream is thinking in terms of human words that, yeah, that's another thing. Like in the Diamond Sutra, where the Buddha is teaching his disciple how nothing exists, how people don't exist, you don't exist, and words don't even exist. Because what are words? Words are a human invention. They're things that we say, whether that's like verbally speaking or you're writing it down, like just a word to define something. So that there's no such thing as words or terms, that these are, it's just us trying to understand it, but trying to understand it by things that don't even exist, words, that there's no such thing as words or terms or names, that those don't really apply, and the truth is even stranger than that, stranger than we can ever imagine. But yeah, no earth theory, so it's like, and I know I see the irony in this. I'm trying to define it in my own words, even though words are not real, but I'm limited by this fake existence, so I'll do my best. Even though it's going to still, at the end of the day, be fundamentally incomplete, no matter how you define it, because it's, I'm trying to define something while I'm still in the matrix, samsara, this fake illusory world, like the Sims video game. It's not real, but the characters in it, if they were sentient, they would think it is. So, no earth theory. Yeah, there's several different trains of thought on it. The most common one, which I disagree with. I agree with a lot of it, but I disagree with part of it. I'll explain. So a lot of people will say they've come to the belief that we're all one consciousness, and that's whether that's God or a higher self. And the people that use the term higher self, they're basically describing what's kind of always existed in Hinduism and Buddha. Well, Buddhism doesn't have a higher self. It doesn't have the we are all one teaching. That's a Hindu thing, and I guess kind of Taoist in a sense. There's differences, but Hinduism teaches we're all part of God. That's how they would define it in a nutshell. And that there's no difference. That teaches that it's illusory. Buddhism, so like in Hinduism, they'll use the term Maya. That word is sometimes used in Buddhism, but nowhere near as frequently, very seldom by comparison, at least in comparison to Hinduism. Buddhism, it'll more so just say things are empty or emptiness. Excuse me. And talk about the concept of non-self, that you don't have a self. And that's one of the ways they differ. So a lot of people, if they go down the no earth rabbit hole, they end up believing a lot of the time, not all the time, but a lot of them, the higher self thing, that we're all one, the Hindu kind of thing, even if they don't identify as Hindu. But and a lot of the time that's because they don't realize what Hinduism teaches, just as they don't realize a lot of the time what Buddhism teaches. And I don't mean that to sound like I know more than they do. It's just a lot of Westerners especially don't know. So they're basically agreeing with Hinduism, kind of Taoism, but it's a bit different. With Taoism, you have the idea of Wu Wei, where it's like harmonizing the yin with the yang and kind of accepting life as it is, and reaching the Tao, the absolute, whereas that would be defined as God in Hinduism, or Brahman, the term that they'll use for that, for God in Hinduism. And Buddhism, it teaches that there's so the reason I disagree with that is there's different levels of like enlightenment in Buddhism. So like at the most basic part, there's like stream entry. You're entering the stream of like your consciousness is entering this stream, entering nirvana, and you lose certain like fetters. They'll use that term, things that are binding you to this fake, illusory, empty world. And when the further you go up, there's this idea in some schools of Buddhism called like there's a couple different terms, but storehouse consciousness, and that's where only consciousness remains. And that's sort of where like the idea, I think, when they say we're all one, I think maybe they're like getting a glimpse of that state, that stage of enlightenment, but it's not the final stage of enlightenment. It's not nirvana. So that's where I disagree. Like that, it explains that to me, why people they think that they've reached their higher self, that we're all one. And then the Hindu concept of that with uniting with God. And this isn't, no offense or anything, if people are Hindu or they believe in whatever, what's commonly referred to like New Age kind of things, like higher self. But my perspective is the Buddhist one. And I think it's, they're thinking, I think it's that people, they may get a glimpse into that stage for just, even if it's ephemeral, even if it's just a fleeting brief moment, perhaps that, but there's still nirvana beyond that to me makes the most sense. So that's why, yeah, so I'm a flat earther, and a lot of flat earthers are no earthers. So yeah, I'm a flat earther and a no earther, and I agree with the Buddhist perspective. Most people would, I think, fall under the Hindu or New Age, whatever, higher self kind of concept, that perspective. I agree with the Buddhist one. The term New Age is kind of inaccurate. I've never met someone that identified as like New Age. That's like, it seems to be used as like a derogatory a lot of the time, like it's a way to dismiss ideas. Like, and a lot of the time when people talk about New Age things, like I use that word loosely. Like it's not really even new. It's like these are old. These ideas come from Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, other Eastern things, religions, much of the time, the vast majority of the time. So yeah, the term New Age doesn't make any sense. It's just maybe a lot of the time they won't know, the people that will use the term higher self, they won't realize that, oh, this came from Buddhism, or oh, this came from Hinduism or Taoism. They won't realize that much of the time. I'm quite certain of that. But if they want to, someone does, think of themselves as New Age, fine. I have nothing against that. It's just I've never heard someone actually call themselves as New Age. Yeah, so that would be why I agree with a Buddhist perspective on this. That makes more sense. That makes perfect sense to me. In fact, yeah, I had a dream, or at least I thought it was a dream. I don't know, it was years ago when I was so first I had, let's see, it's like 10 or 12 years ago or something like that. I'm lying down and I was like waking up from a dream. At least I thought it was a dream. It was scary, honestly, though. Like it felt like, to the people I've described this to, I said, like, imagine like a human mind's worth of consciousness, all the the knowledge you have in your human brain, suddenly like teleported to the mind of a dog. If that knowledge was transferred, excuse me, it would be too much for the dog's brain to like handle. It would be like a supercomputer's worth of knowledge, and like a computer from 20, 30 years ago. It's too much. It's like overheating. Yeah, so it felt like that, and what I thought was a dream, it felt like that, And I remember this sense of like, this is all fake, that the world never happened, no one is real, I'm not even real, I don't exist, no one exists, nothing exists. And that kind of relates to all, to, it relates to Buddhism, Hinduism, and Taoism, I guess. But yeah, and then I got this idea that things were like connected but fake. And yeah, so I guess the Hindu perspective would be, oh, well, that's talking about what they would refer to God or Brahman in their faith, but in or the Tao in Taoism. And Buddhism, it makes the most sense to me that I'm not claiming that I've reached like a level of enlightenment, but it makes me wonder, like, could I have gotten a glimpse into like if this storehouse consciousness, because it's like this infinite consciousness, knowing everything is fake. That makes sense to me, but at the same time, I'm not claiming I'm enlightened. No, I'm not gonna. If I were enlightened, I would have like superpowers. Like when the Buddha, the historical Buddha, when he gained enlightenment, he had psychic powers. Not a lot of people know that. So, yeah, F. Gardner does. He's not claiming to have superpowers. No, no, I'm not claiming to have achieved nirvana. But I'm aware there are different levels of enlightenment, like stream entry, and I'm not even claiming to have done that. But like, it makes me wonder, like, because it does seem to oddly sync up, and it's just something I think about from time to time. Like, could I have gotten, maybe not have entered stream entry, like entering enlightenment, but maybe like tapping into getting closer? I don't know. I used to think there are times in the past where I wonder, was that just a weird dream I had or nightmare? And it seemed terrifying, but yeah, the fact that it seemed terrifying makes me think that it's not just reuniting with your higher self or God, because that, I don't think it would be terrifying then, and I don't think it was like demonic or anything bad. I think that, yeah, something paranormal happened, something supernatural, whatever. I've heard other people describe this. Like, I've heard other people talk about this experience. Like, I saw the videos, Jim Carrey, the actor, Jim Carrey, so like, like Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, and The Mask. Yeah, those are great movies from the 90s. I used to watch those a lot as a kid. But I remember seeing interviews with him, more recent, like where he's talking about, it sounds like what I experienced. So I think a lot of people, I've read other people talk about this too, where they have this experience and it's like, I don't know, a lot of the time it's like, whatever their understanding is, like if they say God, or if they're Hindu, they'd say Brahman, or whatever. They don't identify as anything specifically, or their new age, they might say higher self, but it sounds like we're talking about the same thing. And the Buddhist perspective makes me think of the idea like the different stages of enlightenment and how there's storehouse consciousness, that it's like infinite consciousness, and yeah, before nirvana. And if I'm remembering correctly, it's like in the commentaries and some sutras, it'll describe it as like infinite consciousness before you reach nirvana, the highest level, and it gives that impression that there's one single identity for this storehouse consciousness, whatever state. And when you're in that state, you label things, because that's part of like clinging to everything in Buddhism, like your attachment. So it's like when there's consciousness, you cling to identity. Like for myself, it's like, who am I? I'm F. Gardner, and I'm a famous horror novelist, and anyway, so it's like you claim to whoever you are, whatever your name is. So yeah, the way we identify things like that. So that to me is like a perfect explanation that And it's why you're able to leave it. It says that when you're in this storehouse consciousness, you can, it's only like for a moment, but it seems like eternity. And that's exactly what that felt like. It felt like an eternity. It felt like I had seen it before. So it's like everything it seems to perfectly sync up with that. And I've related that before, how I spoke about the conspiracy known as like the light trap, the soul trap, the soul matrix. It has several different terms, and it makes me wonder if that could be it too. Like if these all relate to it. That's part of what led me down the Buddhism rabbit hole and why I'm a Buddhist. So yeah, that makes the most sense for me. So yeah, I don't think the earth exists. I don't view it in the exact same manner as some other no-earthers do. Like some will say like, oh, we're all connected. Excuse me. And say that there's no difference between you and I, and like if you see a rabbit or another person or even a chair, a couch, TV, it's like we're all one thing, and including the earth. So a lot will define it like that, and the conclusion they'll reach is, well, it's because we're all part of God or the higher self. But the Buddhist explanation makes a lot more sense to me, like in the sense that, well, the storehouse consciousness says that it's infinite consciousness, so you're connecting everything. It's like connected, everything being connected, and giving it an identity and calling it God or higher self, whatever you want to call it, the Tao, Brahman, the point, the absolute, whatever. The point is that you're clinging, and the only thing left is identifying. You're clinging to like a label, a term. So there's like the state of infinite consciousness where everything seems connected, and you're the only thing left is this consciousness, and you're like, oh, well, what is this? What is this? Oh, this must be God. This must be the higher self. So that's what Buddhism says happens, but it's not ultimate nirvana. It's part of getting one of the stages that you can get to on the way there. So that makes the most sense to me, that it's the way Buddhism teaches, and that's not to say it's not true, and like it's just the manner that I agree with the most. But there's truth, I think, in the way other religions talk about it too. Like a lot of what Hinduism says is similar to Buddhism, and Taoism, yes, especially that, like how you even like, I think I may have mentioned when I was talking about Buddhism, I forget, but like when Buddhism would have came to China, when Buddhist monks were meeting Taoist monks, the Taoist monks were already familiar with the concept of Wu Wei. So like to get to the Tao, the Taoist monks, and when they were talking to Buddhist monks, it's like the Buddhist monks and the Taoists concluded, oh, Wu Wei is nirvana. They concluded that they were talking about the same thing. That's a common Buddhist notion, is that is the same thing. That's how they were understanding in China, and then so this would be like, so yeah, what Chinese, the Chinese, Japanese, Koreans primarily, where they'll have like, yeah, so like Zen Buddhism. There's other forms of Buddhism in those countries, but I'm just using that as an example. Yeah, it'll have a lot of overlap with Taoism for that very reason. And in fact, I've heard people say like that, oh, Zen Buddhism, that's more like Taoism than it is Buddhism. Well, I mean, I think it's Buddhism, but it definitely has Taoist influence, and that's just because they're right about pretty much everything. But the Buddhism part gave them a greater understanding, and that kind of formed Zen Buddhism. That makes the most sense to me, at least. So it's not that one is fundamentally just wrong. It's just like the story where the Buddha said, not a lot of people know it came from Buddha, the blind monks and the elephant, where all the blind monks are feeling an elephant trying to describe it, and they're describing it in different ways, but they're describing the same thing, just differently. So it's like that. That's sort of like, and then is it the vinegar tasters? Yeah, the Chinese depiction of the tasting vinegar, representing teachings of Confucius, Lao Tzu, so Taoism, and then Buddha. So it's like all describing the same thing. So yeah, it doesn't just necessarily have to be, oh, only one is correct. I mean, if you think only one is correct, you're entitled to think that. I respect you. That's fine. F. Gardner respects you if you think just one religion or whatever is correct. I don't want to seem preachy. But yeah, no earth theory. Yeah, it's definitely a religious thing, I guess. Well, I guess some people have like I said, some people have more literal interpretation in the sense of like the Matrix, where they think it's actually a computer program. And I'm inclined to think that that's, like I said, that's just a way we can understand it, comparing it to that. But I don't think it's actually a computer or computer software, computer program. But some people do, like simulation theory. Like that's another term they'll use which I guess, yeah, they're basically no earthers. They might not even realize that term exists, but yeah, people that believe in simulation theory, they're basically no earthers, but they don't realize the term no earther exists probably a lot of the time. They're just thinking more related to technology, but I don't know. I'm not sure I agree with that in the sense of like, who knows if a computer is the way we're imagining it even exists outside of the Matrix, this illusion, samsara. Like, so that's just a way we're relating it to. Like, it probably wouldn't make sense thinking of it out of it, since none of us are real. The computers then aren't even real, so it doesn't make sense. That's just a term, just a made-up term describing something that's made up, that doesn't exist outside of this made-up world. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but that's the way I view it. So yeah, no earth theory, it's really interesting. And yeah, I'm aware it's going to sound really far out to people, because it's one of those things, like I got into one of my previous videos, the fake history rabbit hole, where it's like a lot of the time you kind of already have to be a flat earther is like a prerequisite, or else it's going to just seem too out there. And people might dismiss it at first. And that happens a lot of the time with no earth theory. It's like you need to have already gone down the flat earth rabbit hole a lot of the time. I say that because a lot of the no earthers I've encountered, probably at least half of them are already flat earthers. They think it is flat, but it doesn't fundamentally exist. And yeah, I agree with it. I agree with that, but I have a Buddhist perspective on that, though. Yeah, so those are F. Gardner's thoughts on no earth theory and why I don't think there really is earth. I think there seems like there's an earth, but that's because this is an illusion and it's flat. The earth is definitely flat, in my opinion. I respect if you think otherwise, but yeah, I believe the earth is flat, but it doesn't fundamentally exist, because nothing fundamentally exists, because I'm a Buddhist. So the term, yeah, flat earth, well, not just flat earth, but no earth theory, or no earthers, that sounds, I guess, to a lot of people silly, crazy, whatever. But it is what it is. Yeah, I just think that's the reality. Just my opinion. And hope you guys enjoyed watching this. Catch everybody later. Bye.